Welcome back to Changing Latitudes. In episode 1 of Making Our Creek, we went through and cleared out the land of all the dead trees and low foliage that had to be removed. Second step was to review the land and see if there was the drop that we were looking for and where that drop was coming from. North, south, where the drop of a new creek going through the floodplain would work best. Then after that, we had to take the first initial steps to cut into around the culvert in the west that was completely blocked. And then we stepped into taking out the skid steer a couple laps through to cut the creek. So now in episode 2, here we are rolling out the liner at the bottom of the creek bed that we're going to put the small rock on. So obviously we want to keep that separated as best we can. You know, it does a couple things. It keeps the rock above the liner. At the same time, it does a bit of work at keeping the weeds down. And we won't be able to completely close it all out because we'll run into a second issue as we've come to find out that the elevation drop to the culverts in the east is not enough to keep the water within the creek. So I will have to spend some energy importing another 30 loads to bring up the elevation. With the liner in place, the next step was to import a bunch of large rocks from another part of the property. Good news is that we had many of these, call it melon-sized boulders and beyond, throughout the property. So it served two purposes. We were collecting all the rocks that were in the way of mowing fields and driving around the property safely. and put them in a place where we needed them, right next to the culvert, so that we can keep the dirt somewhat corralled away from the creek. large rock placed in the west culvert, we started importation of several truckloads of 2-inch to 4-inch round rock. This was, planned to be the base of the creek, as well as the sides on the sections where the creek walls did not have to be as high. Most of the creek walls were placed at somewhere around 1 foot to 1.5 feet tall. There in the west culvert area, the walls were starting to get over 2 feet, and I felt that the larger rock was necessary to keep everything in place. So with that, the importation of the small rock began, and the distribution at the same time. In the third episode of this series, we will encounter several of our mistakes along the way. We will discover how the walls of the creek were simply not adequate enough, and we experienced a flood. We experienced quite a bit of dirt that was coming into the creek from unknown sources. So that had to be repaired, and we will go on that journey in the next episode.